Okay, cool. All right, I think we're starting. This thing usually has a little delay. I think it starts. Okay, great. Hi guys, welcome back to our channel live on Thursday for Q&A. If you have any questions, education about a topic, a specific topic, we usually try to do a specific topic every week. And to our channel, the Dinosaur Omelette. Who are you?
I'm Angela.
That's my wife Angela. I'm Christopher. And thanks for coming in, guys. So first, I'd like to thank all these new subscribers who have, subbed to the channel. I really appreciate it. Your time's valuable. My time's valuable. There's so much garbage on the internet. So my objective, our objective here is to provide useful information, particularly with these lives. We like to do, useful topics that you guys can incorporate day to day at your own homesteads or houses or whatever it is you're doing, and something you're gaining value for. And hopefully we're somewhat entertaining. Uh-oh, she disappeared. We were a couple minutes late today because I spilled some kitty cat water. Right? Mm-hmm. Kitty cat water. All right, any more? Oh, and Aaron's here. Hey, Aaron. Hello. And Susan. Hi, guys. Thanks for stopping in. Hope you're doing good tonight. So I kind of had a silly clickbaity title. What was it? The number one thing chicken owners and quail owners mistake they're making. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. I guess so. I think it was something like that.
Does it seem like a mistake?
The number one.
And I'm going to get into that in a minute. I just want to say, for anybody new here, down in the description of these videos, I usually leave links to educational material we wrote that I try to make family friendly and very easy to read about tending to particularly the quail and some other stuff, hatching eggs. So you can just click on the links and they'll open. And it's easy stuff. We wrote it from scratch. I did the illustrations. I like to draw, so I like to do that. And that's there for you. So in the links, in the description are links to that stuff. I think that's about it. So tonight, our topic is, why don't you do this part since I talk all the time?
No, you're doing just fine.
It's fine. All right, tonight's topic is keeping records for, as Marissa from Seaweed Reap. Hi, hon. Tonight's topic is keeping records and for productivity, consistency, and quality of your output. Now, I know what you're thinking. What? Keeping records? That sounds boring. You don't want to do that. I understand. It's not actually boring. And this is a behavior that a lot of people don't engage in, which is going to increase, if you change your behavior, or if you increase your skill level, you're going to increase your output and quality. So what's happening here on a homestead? It's like what? A little ecosystem? Mm-hmm. It is. Your homestead, your farm, your garden, whatever you're raising, as long as it's something that's not just generating itself and you don't even touch it all, it's a managed system. And for me, I like to look at it as an ecosystem because everything's interacting. They feed, there's cycles in between everything you're doing. You're a major component to the health and the vitality of each of these components, right? Mm-hmm. You have to be.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think, Kelly, she just popped in.
Hi, Kelly.
Ago.
Yeah, so the systems we're working with, they're dependent upon us for their optimal functioning. Now, last week we did a talk about kind of like permaculture, food layering, and if you're implementing these organisms properly, they should be able to, function very optimally with a little outside influence. You're still going to tend to everything, of course, but all these systems should be working synergistically. But going into record keeping and cataloging what's going on. Why is this important? Particularly for us in our little homesteads, in our food production or animal husbandry or whatever we're doing, is because these systems are reliant upon us for regeneration and their health. And if we're not, if we're not keeping track of what's happening, we're going to lose track of everything. We're going to forget, what was I doing this year with this garden as opposed to 2 years ago? What kind of growth or decline am I seeing in my chicken egg output or my hatch rate with the birds over here? Keeping records is important. The growth rates of animals. So we're going to talk about that, why it's important.
She
does all the brainy stuff with the record keeping.
the main thing is making sure that you're not using up excess energy, taking care of things, planning things, resources,
Doing things over.
finances, space, using more space than really was needed or not enough. It's just making sure that everything's running smoothly and with progress and growth per your goals. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that and get in more detail. Now, I understand you got type A's and you got type B's and you got other kind of types. And what I mean by that, like the type A is very retentive, dots the I's and crosses the T's and does everything and is very organized. And other people that don't function the same way. They're not as organized. So the record keeping is a totally different kind of practice, perhaps for what they're normally used to doing. In the way they catalog or keep track and organize their daily life. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, it's a skill set, record keeping and cataloging.
Yeah, and it's something that can always be improved and honed in on and made simpler. Yeah.
There's a little test I always like to do. If you look in the side of somebody's passenger side vehicle floor or the junk drawer in the kitchen, it'll give you a pretty good idea if they're an A or B. All right, like my passenger side's usually vacuumed.
Or if they share the space with them.
And I'm not saying like the type A or the type B either superior. They're just different kind of people, and they don't function. They don't get along as easily because it's two conflicting personality types or organizational types. So I'm an A with a lot of stuff, not everything. She's very good with record keeping. So let's get into the meat of this. And if you guys have any questions, not just about like keeping records or organizing yourself, which this is really about, pop them down below if you have quail questions, chicken questions. I would say garden questions, but Mauricio's really good with garden questions. Ask her, she's here. She's very, very bright and astute with it. But yeah, chicken, quail, homestead questions. If you guys have any questions, drop them on in. Mm-hmm. All right. Why keep records? You mentioned some of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So we're keeping records for...
Yeah, I mean...
Like, think of our quail. Why are you keeping records?
So if you don't have records, if you're not tracking data in really any capacity, then there's no real... So data collection and such, that ties right into your why and your goal setting, your goals.
Yeah.
Without data... I have a strong personality, which I'm told is type A, but not that organized in life. Laugh out loud. Yeah.
Same.
Social butterfly. Then it's going to be more of a scattered kind of like whatever. Like it could be something as simple as like growing one plant, or growing multiple plants,
if you're growing one plant,
or
a
group of things.
Yeah.
But if you're not paying attention to some sort of data points, then it's difficult to quantify or measure growth, how the living creature or organism is doing. Are you getting anywhere near your goal if you have a goal?
And this is satisfying.
Very scattered.
Yeah, and that's part of your objective. Remember, you're trying to decrease the effort that you're putting in, just a normal human thing. Mm-hmm. Less effort, more output, or greater return of investment, like what you're investing into, like you're putting your time, effort, and very, very importantly, your education. Because the more time you spend doing this kind of stuff, like looking online, reading and learning, you're going to save so much time. Excellent example, anybody who gardens, like the first year your garden's dead, it's not functioning well, and you keep learning, and then hopefully you're tracking stuff like what kind of soil's working, what kind of moisture, shade.
You're learning a lot, and through that process of whatever, like you might do something new, grow a plant or grow an animal for the first time, and you don't know what to expect, so you're learning and taking note of the stages of growth and output that the animal or plant is giving you. But then as you're observing and taking notes, you might realize that if you do certain steps earlier in the process of growth for the plant or the animal, then you could save a ton of time or energy or space just by tweaking what you did. So it's the whole process is it's something that you learn.
Yeah, and
through trial and error.
You're learning and you're growing from basically numbers, because a lot of this is just data that you're collecting. And this is why it sounds boring. You're like, oh man, I know numbers.
It's tedious.
It's tedious. I don't want to do
but
that.
But it's important. It's valuable. It brings value.
And it's free. It doesn't. It's relatively inexpensive, if not free, to get a pencil and a piece of paper or a little app where you're cataloging, whatever your data points are, weights, growth, hatching times, whatever it is, growing times for plants, whatever your data is that you're collecting. This now becomes an invaluable reference point. I mean, you use it all the time, right? It's extremely important.
And then I realize with our homestead, if there was a certain category, like a certain maybe group of quail or certain type of animal that I kind of got a little not as honed in on tracking for a year, then I'll get to the end of the year and I'll realize I don't really have much information about the group, and so now it feels almost like I wasted a lot of my year, and I have to fill in the blanks to get started again and get rolling again. And the data, just observing, it's asking a lot of questions, asking yourself questions about the process, and then looking for the answers. It brings a lot of ease, and it's satisfying because you're seeing that growth, or is problem solving too, how to solve things.
And a great thing about this too, if you're trying to start capitalizing on your homestead or your critters, it's a wonderful way to get some practice in record keeping, because you're 100% going to need to track and catalog your sales that are coming up. Like in the future, let's say you're not selling anything. You're like, you know what? We're growing really well, and man, we got all these animals. Maybe I should start trying to sell them. Do it properly. Proper planning. Plan first. You have your records. And now if you have some record keeping behind you, it'll be a lot easier to transfer that over to clients. Like I can now catalog and track clients, what their purchase behaviors are, where they're coming from, who their contacts are, who they might word of mouth be able to sell on my behalf because they like me and they know me, that sort of thing. So keeping records just for yourself is very easy to transfer, because it's a skill set. It's something you have to practice, especially if you don't do it. It's something you can transfer over to when you have customers. However, instead of, I'm losing my mind, I'm stuttering. Instead of having customers, never having tracked information like that before, and then being dumped on you, it becomes overwhelming. So, especially if you're in that position and you're going to start into some kind of sale or business, you're going to want to have a background in some of that record keeping, that tedious, boring stuff. Because again, you want productivity, output, and efficiency. And that's a huge, huge component. It's like anything else, the finished product is 1/10 of what happened. Because 90% of it was planning, orchestrating the work, and all of the other infrastructural stuff behind the scenes you didn't see. And the planning part and the record keeping is a huge one. Yeah. So, does that make sense? All right, so that's some whys. One other big important why you're going to keep records is many times it's mandated by the gov. Government wants to have a regulation. Like my sister-in-law, she has a critter patch and she raises sheep, right? And so they need to be registered, and they need to catalog them, and they need to keep track of them, see who's doing what and how they're growing, and et cetera.
And then there's different, regulations depending on state and, county and all that stuff.
Yeah, and they're going to want to monitor your animals, and perhaps, I didn't really look into this, but it's starting to make sense, maybe even for insurance reasons, if there's a loss and you have some records of, obviously the record of the number of animals, but perhaps the history there, their age, and that sort of information too. Okay, well that's some why we're keeping records. I hope that's not too boring.
No.
I should have had intermittent, live animal display. I was going to bring in my bunny rabbit to break.
Say a puppet show.
So I hope this isn't too boring. But that business stuff, our friend Aaron if you're still here, I hate to bring you in here if you don't mind, but yeah, you have a biz and you got a lot of critters, so the record keeping is very important.
Yeah, because I mean, it affects everything. It affects the whole operation. It'll affect feed consumption. How much feed are you using? How much is getting wasted? You know,
Yeah,
all kinds of details.
and you're integrating at that point. Once you're selling stuff, you're integrating different different points of data, like the animal information and the customer information. Yeah, I know you're here, Aaron. I just wanted to say you have an awesome operation, and I know the record keeping is probably very important to you.
Nice, yeah. Any idea what info you have track for NPIP certification?
Any idea for info you have to track NPIP certification? Depends on the state you're in, but most of the time they're coming out and they're going to be doing what do you call it? Bird flu, and they're testing for. I can't believe I just did this 10 minutes ago, and other organisms, and probably checking your facility. But you know, call your local dude if that's something you're interested in doing.
Yeah, I don't think it's
To do an inspection of site.
Too complex.
No, they'll schedule time, come out, do inspection of site, and test the critters, and you get your test back, and they do it intermittently.
Yeah.
But, all right, types of records to keep. So we talk about why keeping records. I hope that makes sense. I'm talking too damn much. I hope that made sense, and it wasn't too boring. But yeah, that's why, a lot of the reasons why we're keeping records. I'm sure there's others. So why don't you blab about types of records let's talk about the records that you keep. So we're gonna, instead of doing some of this.
It's specific. It's specific to the.
Aaron has good info.
Main thing to track for NPIP is bird loss and shipping records on form.
VS9-3. VS9-3. Man's an invaluable resource. Thank you, Aaron. He's pretty pro.
Yeah,
Very
so
professional dude.
as far as types of records to keep, well,
what do you keep? Like, for
Oh,
example,
well-
let's just use our place as an example rather than going over a whole bunch of general
so
ones.
I mean,
So we
living
raise-
things. I think you can.
We raise quail, chicken, and bunny rabbits, but mostly you keep records for your quails, your chickens, and your silkies. Yes.
For everything that's alive,
Yeah.
so that I interact with. So
what are we tracking with the quail? Because we breed those and we get rid of a lot of jumbo.
Well,
paternics.
but in general, with anything living, even if it's plants, you're gonna want to track the growth to some degree, per the animal or plant specifications. So, like for quail, if I'm raising some for our breeders, for example, I am from the start. I'm checking their egg size, and selecting eggs that I want to see more consistently in our quail. So it starts with the egg, and then I'm making more selections with the chicks. At 3 days old, I'm inspecting the chicks. I'm weighing the chicks, and I'm tracking their growth speed.
Pause. I want to say, because you mentioned the word consistency, and that's really important, to have a consistent output, especially for people like in our position where we're selling something. You want to have a consistent product. It doesn't even matter if you're making goat soap or whatever you're doing. You want to have a consistent product that somebody knows, like, oh, I bought that 6 months ago. When I buy it again, it's the exact same thing. We're close to it. And those records help keep the consistency, at least in this instance.
And this applies to, any animal or plant. Like I said, you're going from the early stage, the earliest stages you can start tracking some sort of information, then the more value you're gonna feel you have. You're gonna have more information. You're gonna feel more understanding for what you're working with. Aaron says, yes, that's exactly how I start and work my breeding programs. Eggs first, yes. So whether it's a sheep, a chicken, a rabbit, a plant, the youngest, you're gonna be looking for health, vitality, strength, and then also whatever's important, if it's speed of growth or quality of growth or how it's growing.
This is the later section. So how do we track it? How are you keeping your records? I mean, there's different methods. What do you do?
You'd want to do what makes sense to you. So that can look very different as far as wording, as far as categories goes.
Or the way you're recording, paper versus electronic.
And the more you do it, you'll realize what makes more sense to you. So you might find that you have a whole bunch of like random papers everywhere.
You know who I bet is really good at record keeping? Remember those girls in high school that had the pen with the 4 colors on top? And they'd always have a special color for each thing they were taking.
For studying.
I thought they're fantastic.
Yeah. But
record keepers.
So I'm saying if you're just starting with record keeping, this is different if you've been doing it. But if you're just starting, then you just want to start with somewhere. And let's say if you're working with a group of something, an animals or plants, then you can track if it's growth from a young age. Then you can have a whole like a column tracking all of each individual animal or plant. Young.
And, be sure to mention there's also like the parameters for the record keeping. On this is going to be a time basis because we're looking at growth is going to be stipulated at time intervals.
Right, exactly. So like the quail with the eggs, I'm weighing the eggs and I'm tracking how many eggs. So if I'm going to be setting them in the incubator, obviously because I want to hatch them, I'm going to be weighing them and tracking how many of each weight I have. The quantity of eggs per that, like if it's 17 grams, 18 grams, that sort of thing, how many eggs. I use color coding is the best thing to track multiple parameters on one sheet. Yeah.
Absolutely. No offense if you use the 4-color pen, Aaron. I didn't. That's a good thing. Yeah, no, color coding's 100% really, really beneficial. I was one of those girls with the 4-colored pens. Now I have to use a variety of multiple colored pens. Type A for sure. Yeah, that's awesome. See?
Yeah, that's good.
I saw them all the time with the little multi pens, and I'm like, I can't even handle my one rotten pencil. How are they doing the 4 colors?
Yeah, and the more like clear and concise you can make your records, the better for you. Because a lot of times, it seems when you're in the process of recording the data, it can get sloppy because maybe you're working with a lot of numbers or you're working with a lot of maybe chicks or eggs or whatever, seeds. Yeah. And then you'll end up having to put that data, transpose it to something else. Or if you're using a computer or an electronic thing, maybe it's all, one shot.
You don't want to get it lost. I was going to say the color coding, almost probably everybody uses, if they're monitoring the quail, everybody's using colored bands.
Yeah, some sort
of one of the easiest ways.
Band thing, yeah.
A simple physical color coding.
But I want to stress though, you want to use what system works best for you. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, neighbor Kajama. It's okay. What works best for you, because like we mentioned, data record keeping, it's a detailed process. Even if you're spending 10 minutes to do it, it's still detailed, and you want to make sure you're doing it. So if you're using a system that you don't like or it's just cumbersome, then it's going to be difficult to keep at it.
I'm going to have to pitch for somebody right now. I'm going to give a pitch for one of my buddies. Artificial intelligence. So unfortunately, the robots are definitely taking over, but you can use them right now. So if you get online, you can use one of the AI programs and ask them, hey, I'm trying to become organized in whatever it is. What should I be tracking? How should I track it? And you would be, I don't know if you guys use the AI, but I'm not a big fan of it because I like human stuff. But it's definitely a tool, and you can use that for assistance. I wouldn't trust the robot to do anything for me 100%. But an assistance in developing a method that might work for you, especially if you don't have a solid background in any kind of data tracking. You can ask him and say, hey, Mr. Computer AI, I don't really have a background in tracking data, just like yours, and you'll get a response that usually is pretty good. And the thing's only getting better. I did an AI video, I guess, a year and a half ago. Remember that? Mm-hmm. I said we did a video on how to use artificial intelligence to help yourself, be productive in your homestead. And that was a year and a half ago, and the technology's exploded in that short amount of time. So it's definitely something you can employ. That was a little side note.
Yeah, but
it's helpful.
And just to finish with what I was saying, also important, make sure how you decided to record your data, it's clear and easy for you to understand. And if you're using a notebook, or if you're using Excel, or if you're using some sort of app on your phone or your device, make sure it's easy to use, easy to navigate. Because again, it just doesn't take much for if this is difficult for you in your personality to do, or if you do like recording data, but life gets busy. If the method that you're using becomes cumbersome in any way, it's going to be difficult to continue at it. I like writing, so I take a picture so I don't lose it. Definitely not type A. That's a good idea to take a picture. I like writing too. There is something to do with the brain and...
Sorry if you already answered this, but what do you guys do to track your personal farm stuff? Good question. The way I track it is I go like this. And try to remember. And Angela does a better job.
I like using I initially write everything by hand because I'm usually working with animals and they're dirty and make messes, and so I don't have my electronic device near. So I write everything, my hands get gross. But I actually use an app. I think it's just called Notes.
It's a notebook.
It's...
Haha, Christopher, you sound like me. Yeah, so let's go open a business and let it fail together. Because we'll both have the same.
Anyway, I really like the app a lot because, Christopher, that's the most common way to track.
Oh, good.
I'm not like that. So the app that I use, Notes, I believe, Notebook maybe. I like it a lot because you can make multiple books in it. You can have one, or you can make a whole bunch of books, and then per topic. So Angela sounds like me too, covered in the poo-poo. Yes. And let's see. So I have one that's labeled Jumbo Quail. So and I have a whole bunch of different books in this app. I click on the book, and then there's chapters. I'm a little hot mess, says Kelly. For quail, laminated cage tags and dry erase markers helps us down. Yes, that's really good. Right. And it depends on your operation, how big your operation is, how many moving parts you have going. But that's a really great note to say. Yeah.
Yeah. So even somebody who's casually keeping quail, even if you're not running it as a business, it's just a casual thing you do for eggs or pets. It's a wise idea to track them to some degree. Food consumption, you want to track your costs at least.
So just to finish my thought, the reason why I like the one app that works for me is because I can have all my data in the same area for all the different topics in an organized way without it all melding together.
Oh, is Vernon in here? It is Vernon. Hey Vernon, we just became buddies on the Facebook. I hope you had a chance to stalk me out and see that I'm a normal human with kids and a wife and stuff. But hi, nice to see you. I hope your fishing went well. So yeah, absolutely. From beginner to seasoned professional. Well, seasoned professional would have been keeping records, otherwise he wouldn't be a seasoned professional, because it's really, really important at that point. But from beginning, as a beginner, especially if you have kids, I always like to talk about the kids. If you have kids and you're really disorganized, so to speak, and you're not good at record keeping, this is a good time to, help them learn that skill. Because I was horrible, with disorganization as a kid. And it would have been nice to, have some kind of instruction on how to be organized. So if you're doing animals, it's a really good way to get kids organized and on track, keeping a schedule and beginning to self-regulate, because now they have something to reference to that isn't just mom and dad. It's something that they're dependent on and they're responsible for. Still fishing. I'll be back next week.
That sounds fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah. So do we have different examples? Do you want to go over the examples, and then I can.
yeah, these are things to consider. This is important.
Yeah.
This is why we keep track of stuff. Ooh, I don't even know if this is on this list I made. I forget. But the tax guy, especially, if you're running a business or even if you're not keeping track for the tax guy. All right.
I meant this. Did you? Well, a couple of things. We mentioned earlier feed, how much feed you're using, prices of the feed, weights of the feed. Is there changes just in how it's being? The distributor is selling it in weight, that sort of thing, because that may affect your finances if you have a big operation or if you have a lot of other things going on. And also how the animals are consuming it. Are they eating all of the food, or are they picking through it and wasting a whole bunch?
Egg output. Tracking egg output. So whenever you talk to anybody about animal egg output, like quail people, so they're like, so do they still lay in the winter? Some people would say, yeah, they lay the same amount. Another guy would be like, no, they kind of like don't lay as much. I was like, okay, geniuses, how do either of you people know? Do you have it written down somewhere? No, not really, but we're kind of judging from a perception. Perception may sometimes be correct, but concrete, numbers and information that you're recording at the time of the event, that's absolute. So you can say, actually our quail over a 1 month period in the winter season are laying 20% less or 5% less or the same amount because I tracked it. I tracked it all winter and I counted those eggs and I know definitively exactly what kind of output we're getting. And even so much as details, like I know the cages over here are laying consistently, but these cages for some reason aren't laying as much. Might be something else. Uh-oh. Was that a Kelly comment?
Yeah.
Let me read what Miss Kelly wrote. I got to change something about my feeders. Gets better every year, but still not where I want to be. I'm assuming you're probably talking about spillage, loss.
Yeah. So I track my egg output more in our ducks and chickens because I have a lot of data on our quail and the bigger birds, for me anyway, just as a note, I have I track how many eggs they lay per day, and through the year I make notes about changes in their behavior, and then I can go back. So it might be maybe we're coming on winter and I forgot that they're using more energy to stay warm. And now their egg count is going down, and maybe I have a light in the coop, and I might be like, well, what's going on? Why is their egg count going down? And just busyness of life, I forget to increase their feed, so that they so that they can increase their egg output again. And then I'll sometimes I'll refer back to my notes and be like, oh, it's the same time of year, or just a behavioral thing. Then I have notes that I can look back on, or if I have older birds, then I can see when they're petering out on their production, or when did the young birds begin. I can see there's an average age when they're doing that. So the more info you have, then you can look back on it too, and it's just makes things work more smoothly for you, and you're more confident in what you're doing.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Another good reason to keep records is for health issues and health trends. So what's the issue with chickens? Like coccidiosis, right? So let's say we have a record of coccidiosis in some patch of chickens. And let's say you have a big, like a breeding area, or you have different areas where your chickens are residing, and we're seeing this issue coming up here and then here again, and we're wondering, okay, well, we know it's a soil-borne pathogen, so maybe it's, we're going to take a look and disinfect the soil, whatever we're doing. But we know, we're not trying to use memory. Wasn't the chicken sick over here somewhere last spring with the same thing? Or weren't these chickens sick over here? You're keeping track, and you can reference that and realize, we're amateur epidemiologists. We know that the disease broke out in Pen A in, 226 last year, or 426 last year. Susan had something to say to us. My notes remind me just tonight to cut back on mealworms for my duckies. Now that they are laying daily again.
Oh, that's awesome.
Do you cook with your duck eggs or eat your duck eggs? I cook with them all the time in our muffins. They're good for that because of the nice fat content. They're a little fatty for me, so I kind of eat the yolk. I mean, not the yolk, the white.
The white.
I'll make like a big giant white.
He made. I walked into the kitchen this morning, and there was a cookie sheet, and it was covered mountain of cracked eggshells.
I'll be right back. Let me show them what I made.
And I was just like, is that for both of? Even if it was for both of us, it was just excessive. And I asked him, "Are you making an egg pie or an egg cake for yourself?" And he plopped the pan on his plate, and it was as big as his plate, and it was like this thick, and it was egg.
My pediatrician says I'm growing. Just kidding. So like last week we talked about regenerative farm practices and food layering and reusing animal stuff. So I take the eggs and I dry them out. In the summer I'll put them in the hot sun, but today I just stuck them in the oven and I ground them. And look, I have a rich calcium powder. I can sprinkle that on the garden. Mm-hmm. You know, that's a whole big bowl of that stuff.
That's from today, but you also
that's just from today.
You did the pickling of the quail eggs.
Yeah, and I pickled quail eggs today, but that's not. That's just a food cooking thing. Yeah, so we
Susan said, I think she said that she eats them, the duck eggs.
Oh, good. I cook with them. What's Kelly saying? I'm letting my Muscovy hen hatch some eggs, but the Muscovy eggs in my incubator should be hatching, and they aren't yet. And Susan's dehydrator is full of shells. Oh, awesome. I'm not the only one. See? Great. Yeah, we don't have a dehydrator, so I'll use the oven on a low heat. Anyway.
Yeah, Kelly, with your duckies, you can always candle them quickly to see if they haven't pipped yet. Candle them to see if there's movement. But they can take a couple extra days to hatch. They are kind of sensitive with the humidity level. The Muscovies are. So yeah. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I just wanted to mention one more thing about health records and why we're recording that. I mean, obviously, if you're going to a vet, your vet's keeping records, right? But for many people that don't have the big giant critters, you know, you're not taking a cow or a sheep into the vet. Maybe you just have a chicken or a bunny rabbit. Your bunny rabbit's looking ill, so you treat it the way you want to treat it. But you want to record that and take a note of it.
Because if you're breeding, something, then you can actually, your notes can reveal if you're finding any sort of defect in your lines or genetic defects or just something that, it could be there's one of your breeders has, some sort of genetic makeup that you need to remove the bird or remove the animal from your program because maybe it's putting out this other stuff. And maybe you wouldn't have noticed that put those two and two together without tracking things.
Yeah, and as you're tracking, remember your efficiency, quality output, and I forgot to mention like vibrancy and health of the entire homestead and all the creatures there. You want to maintain that, of course, and keep them in equilibrium as much as possible. What were you saying?
Another comment there.
Ooh, a comment from Kelly. Oh, Kelly said, I'll have to message you guys about the Muscovy incubator eggs because I've heard they're tricky. Mrs. W knows about the Muscovy eggs. It's, bomb them with humidity and then take the humidity
down. Sometimes, once they're pipping, I know you're not at that stage, but once they're pipping, sometimes if the humidity's too high and it's if it's too high, then the internal membrane can get kind of sticky on them, and then it's not quite like shrink wrap. It's not dried. It's like a stickiness, and then it makes it difficult for them to keep hatching. But yeah, we can.
Yeah, Kelly, give us a call tomorrow or message. Nobody calls anybody anymore. I talk to the telemarketers for 10 minutes just because nobody calls. They're always messaging me. I'm like, no, wait, I want more credit cards. Don't go. And they're hanging up on me. All right. So I think we got a lot of pretty decent reasons for why keep records. And why keep records, a lot of that's going to be individualized to the person and what their goals are at their will homestead. You know, especially you don't want to be taking a million different records and become a lunatic with it. Like, oh, how much does he weigh? Oh, how many eggs did he lay? What are you doing? You got 2 chickens. Why are you going overboard with this? But keep some. You want to keep some records with whatever your venture is to track your progress and monitor all these.
You'll realize what is actually important to track and what isn't as you do it, and you'll hone in your record tracking to make it more and more valuable to you and what you're doing. So yeah.
Cool. I think we'll move on to this last little part, which is just tips. Tips for keeping records. What helps? Like the thing Aaron mentioned earlier, color coding. Color coding systems, which, if you're using especially electronic, you can do that really easily and really well. Like you have colored notebooks, right?
Well, I use.
It's a hard question. It's a yes or no.
I use colored bands and such with the birds. Haha, I'll call you Chris. Don't go telemarket.
You're a real human, so I don't need to. I'll talk to you.
Yeah, or like Aaron was saying, he with putting the tags on the cages, because that's visual and it's just quick. You don't have to open something or find a notebook or something to find information. It's right there, and you can easily update it.
Yeah, Marissa, what she was saying, photos.
She'll take notes or something, and then she'll take a photo of it.
Yeah, take a photo and then sketch your notes on your telephone.
Yeah, whatever works best for you. That's easy to understand.
And this is kind of important. Be detailed and specific. Be detailed and specific.
Yeah.
So it is.
Because later you'll.
What's an example so they'll understand if they're new to this kind of thing? Give an example of quail keeping records, detailed and specific, about weight and age.
Well.
And which bird?
Yeah. So, if you're. It's kind of hard for me to think of the top of my mind, but.
I can tell them. I'll tell them.
Okay.
So, tracking 5, 10, let's just say 5 quail to keep it simple. Tracking 5 quail, we're weighing them at week, 4, okay? Weighing each one. We're not naming each one, but we're coding them. We're going to give them a band or a combination of bands and write down the reference into the record keeping, right? 2 black bands, 1 white band, 2 white bands, etc. And then we put that in the board. And we've weighed them, and now we know how much each of these guys weigh, and then they go about their business. And then we come back at an interval time period, 6 weeks, 5 weeks. What do you do? Another week later? 4 to 6 weeks?
With the breeders, would be, well, first, it's egg, 3 days, and then 1 week old, and then I do weekly.
Yeah. So
because it depends on how big your group is.
I'm just trying to do a simple example.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's just sit what she's saying. We're weighing each week, but now we know each of the quails. It's kind of like they have a name, but it's their color designation, double white, double green, single greens, etc. And we can go back, and then we're watching the progress of their entire growth cycle.
And then as you're doing that, because you're being detailed, you're now taking note of, maybe you're noticing personalities in each of these birds. Maybe you're noticing some are more calm, some are more flighty, or maybe even not as friendly, and you can make these notes on there, and then you can decide at some point who you're going to keep or what you really like, and you might even tweak how your breeding program looks. So the more detailed you are, the better, but also when you're making a note, you don't want to be vague on that note, because later, let's say
you're not going to remember.
You're doing temperament. Maybe you put a sad face.
Yeah.
And you're like, when you wrote it, you're like, this was not a nice quail. So instead of writing that down, you put a sad face. But then later, you look at it and you're like, I don't even know what I was thinking. What does that even mean? It's because it's something vague.
Now, new to quail or chickens or any of these critters who are thinking of breeding, we always talked about, we bring it up all the time, there's a difference between reproducing animals and breeding the animals. Reproducing the animals, Mother Nature does that. You just stick them in the thing, come back, let them cook for a while, you got babies popping out. Breeding is a specific technique and attention to these details with the expectation of an outcome, that we have an outcome that we're seeking from the breeding of the organisms, right? So and we also always, and I'm sure you guys know, like if you're looking for an animal online, everybody's a breeder. Oh, I breed this. No, you don't. You got some wild animals from the auction, stuck them in a box and popped out babies. That's not really. So buyer beware. But consumer, if you're a person who's watching this who's a consumer, or if you're a person who's watching this who's breeding for quail, educate your customers too. Like, hey, this is what breeding is, and they may be interested, but at least it validates and legitimizes what you're doing rather than being the infamous backyard breeders that they call. Backyard breeders, I think, are like people who just duplicate animals and sell them. So,
Yeah, they get
but
excited.
yeah, keeping these records establishes, I mean, that's really the foundation of a breeding program is the record keeping.
Yeah, because and the goal. So if you're whatever the outcome you want, you have that in mind during the entire process, so that you're narrowing it down to get to achieve that goal. And just one side note: whenever you're doing or getting preparing yourself to do some sort of record tracking, if it's you're tracking the growth or something of animals or plants. Make sure to organize yourself beforehand. Because if you're not organized beforehand, before actually doing the act of data collection, you might end up getting frustrated because you're in the process of doing something, especially if you're working with animals that are alive. Then that's not what I meant. Well, like eggs, like that's not moving. It's easy to walk. It's not as difficult, but you don't want to end up being in the process of data collecting and then realize you need this tool or you need this paper or this pen or this clipper or whatever, and you have to pause and go find it and track it down, and then you want everything to be as much as you can remember
in working order, no dry pens,
set up and in an easy to access way. Whatever you need, and then also to do the act of data collecting, if you need to first check past data, so that you know what you're doing. Like if you're working with multiple birds or multiple animals or different groups, you might want to refresh yourself on the current data you have on that animal or group, so then you can make sure you're properly tracking or recording the new data. Because then you don't want to do the task, then be done, put everything away, and then you're like, oh man, I got all this information. You look at it and you're like, oh my God, I totally forgot to do this particular, tracking. I did everyththing else, but I forgot to do this. Now I got to do it a lot of it over again. So
that would not
be prepared as much as you can.
Make sure everything's in working order.
Yeah.
And make sure you know your technique. Like, for example, Angela weighs her quail. We weigh the quail in little Tupperwares.
Yeah, and I just use, simple. I want it to be simple, and I put them in a Tupperware that's about the size of the bird.
I would like to, because I love internet people, I love this internet people story. And you can see it online if you look for it. We're weighing the quail. You put them in a little Tupperware. They're in there for what, maybe 4 seconds?
Seconds.
And man, the internet people are calling you like the worst.
Breathe in there.
You're killing them. What are you doing? That's the worst thing ever.
I did not run a vat. I didn't suck the air out of that container before putting them in.
They're in there for maybe 4 seconds at the most. I think they're gonna. It's. Okay.
But you use what works for you. I like it because then I just, if I need to clean it easily at the end too, I can clean it. But it's just something that works for us.
Yeah, okay. Well, great. All right. Tips. Let's see. Habits, be habitual. I mentioned this, using technology.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of a computer nerd. Pushing my glasses up. So, technology is great. I'm not very organized with the use of technology. I mean, I do use it, but using tech, if it's your thing, is going to be very advantageous, not just for you personally, but on the business end. And again, for tax season, when you look stuff up. You can find it easily if it's on the tech. And I know there's a downside. You could lose it. Files get corrupted. You lose files. Back everything up.
That way of weighing is better than what I've done before.
You know, I'm afraid to hear it, but if you'd like to tell us, I'd be listening.
One note too, one last thing on the act of data collecting. Once you're complete, if the system that you're using to collect the data, like to record the data while you're doing it, if you are anticipating going to have to put it into something else, your more permanent, record keeping, if it's a notebook or if it's a computer or whatever app, do it as soon as you can. Try not to wait long. I know like life gets busy, or maybe it was a really like tedious task, the actual like doing the whole process of collecting data. Maybe it was tedious and you're just like kind of worn out. But try and do it as soon as possible if you have to transpose it or move it on to your more permanent location, because there may be details that you're just keeping in your head and you don't really realize that. And then when you're putting it you're recording it in the permanent source, then you're like, oh yeah, this, and this, and you add it. But then if you wait later, you might be like, I thought I was being really detailed, but this, and you just, that's even more like tedious to have to sit there and think. So do it as quick as you can. It's more effective, and it'll be more rewarding to you too, because the whole process will be more complete.
Yeah, one other thing, guys. A good message here from Marissa. I can use Google Lens on the photos to copy and convert my notes to text.
That's true.
Yeah, that's right, man.
Yeah, that's true.
You have Google Lens.
Mm-hmm.
I have the evil one. I have the Apple something or other.
You can.
It'll read it. It'll read it. But
Google Photos will
yeah,
do too.
That's technology. That's AI, man. The robots, they're helpful now. In the future, we will be their slaves, but right now they're helpful.
And there's also voice to text. If you can't, if it's too cumbersome to write things down.
How many times does autocorrect say the wrong thing? I think there's literally many divorces based on autocorrect saying something that it shouldn't have said. Anyway, so the important thing with keeping records, if you're going to be working with a group of people, or even if you have little part-time employees, everybody needs to be able to read and decipher the records. Like Jerry reads it and then Joan reads it, and they don't have a problem. Jerry and Joan know exactly what's going on. Not, what does this mean? Nobody should be saying, what does this mean? That means there's not good communication. That's if you're working with a group of people. If it's just you, whatever. But if you're relying on other people and you want things to function really as best as possible, it's probably a wise idea to have a uniform record-keeping system that everybody understands. That makes sense? I think it makes sense. Like at work, they force everybody to do the same thing. They need efficient. That's the thing about homesteading, man. You're your own boss, really. You got to get up. You got to satisfy your own schedule. You can't make an excuse. There's none of that. I don't feel like it. Or I'm not, that's not something I'm used to doing. You don't get to say that, because I think one of the foundations of the mindset of like the homesteader crowd is self-improvement, growth, learning, skill acquisition, all these things.
Discipline.
Yeah, self-discipline. Nobody's perfect, and I don't value judge anybody like that. But, we can always improve on our personal performance. And, at the end of the day, it's we're our own authority figures. We're forcing us to get up or not, or make excuse or not make excuse. That's tough to do.
And that's the whole why. That's why it's so important to know your why. Because that is your motivation. That's your purpose with whatever it is that you're doing. That's what's going to get you going, especially when you don't feel like it, or if life gets a little challenging. That why is really important to understand, and even to have on hand somewhere so that you can if you can break it down a little bit more than just like a basic why, then you can read it again, have it somewhere where you can see it, and then it'll motivate you, because this is like personal for you, your why. Anyway,
I like doing this stuff because we're tucked in the woods, it's rural, there's trees everywhere, there's water, we're in nature. I think human beings will inherently find themselves in a greater state of peace when they're immersed in nature. Like Vernon, he's out fishing. He's out by the sea. We're by the natural beauty of things. That's a big why for me. Like, and then working with the animals. So think about that, you know, kind of reminisce on that if you can daily or intermittently to be a little bit of a motivator. And every once in a while, we change. We're not perfect, so we adapt and we change, and our motivations change. So we can kind of track that too. You wrote it down. It's like, why am I doing this? I don't really feel the same way anymore.
And
I changed a little, and this is my new thing.
That's okay. It's okay if you're, you know, what you're doing shifts, you know, because you want to.
Probably should.
Yeah,
Right.
We're
not stagnant.
Growth.
We grow or, anyway. I think that makes some sense. Makes sense to me. Did
you go through everything there?
I think I went through
Yeah,
everything
I think you did.
Yeah. I've been taking notes for a while now. We were doing this on the fly, I think, for the first, 4 months or so?
In the beginning.
We were doing this on Facebook Live, I guess, on the couch. And then we upgraded to a sign. Upgraded to a sign. Look at this, man. If you told me when I was in high school I'd have a sign one day, I'd be, get out of here, sign. You gotta be kidding me, man.
Oh my gosh.
I'm in the big time here. Yeah, so like attainable goals. You know, set your attainable goals with your why. And it's okay to have attainable goals. Like, I want to put Amazon out of business. Possible. Theoretically, it's not beyond the realm of physics. It could be done. But the likelihood is smaller than I want to sell more quails. Like, that's more attainable than putting Amazon out of business. So
but
I'm setting
where there's a will, there's a way.
there's a way. I'm setting attainable goals.
Right. And yeah, making sure to remind yourself of your why keeps you on track. Because, you know, just things get burdensome, or maybe you go through different seasons where you might have, you know, more energy or less energy, or just like time is different. So revisiting your why, because you might get to a point and be like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this anymore? So you want to remember your why, have it somewhere where you see it.
Yeah, she mentioned something important, you know, before I forget, don't compare yourself to other people or live up to somebody else's standard. Man, that Facebook makes people depressed. The internet, the Instagram, and all this fake stuff, like, oh, they got all this free time and money.
Yeah.
You're your own person, you're on your own journey. People deal with a lot of stuff. You know, you have problems. Like here on the internet land, everybody's perfect, right? Oh, look, we're happy and everything's perfect. It's not real life, okay? You know, tragedies happen, stressors happen, problems are going on, there's financial issues. Everybody's dealing with different things and living up to these goofy, false standards that you see on the internet. I know the younger generation does this a lot, but it's kind of inherent with us, this tribal thing, like, I want dominance in my social group, so I'm looking at my social group for comparison, except my social group is always lying to me with these photos. What do they do? The filters and all this stuff?
Oh, yeah, the filters.
So, you know, if you're dealing with your own life, we don't compare it to somebody else's. And we stay focused on, like, it's not about being selfish. It's like, I have to, you know, I'm on my own track, and I'm going to try to live it the best I can. Yeah. And if somebody's offering fellowship or, you know, support, I appreciate it.
Comparison is the thief of joy. Theodore Roosevelt. Yeah, because when you're looking outward at everyone else, you're now like you're like dilute water. You know, when you put a drop of ink or whatever dye in water, it's getting diluted, and you're not developing you. You are so unique. Just you. You have your own individual passions, desires, interests, skills, different skills that are honed in more so than other people, like, because you're you. Nobody else has these fingerprints. You have your own. And so when you're looking at everyone else, you're getting distracted from developing and growing the character and person that you are. And I'm not talking about in any way selfishness or anything like that. I'm talking about like focusing on character development of yourself, understanding yourself, pursuing the things that you're always talking about, like your innate things, the things that
have innate gifts and qualities. The better we become as human beings, the better we can give to our fellow human beings and serve the rest of these humans.
Right, exactly. So when you're working on yourself and developing yourself, you're becoming more confident. You're working through difficult thing, maybe personality things or struggles, like focusing on working through these things and growing. Now you're becoming a more confident person, sure and clear-sighted. You're making good decisions better decisions for yourself, and other people will look at you and be like, man, I want to be like that person, but really they should be looking at themselves and growing themselves. So a lot of people just go through life distracted, and time is so valuable, and you want to develop and grow, and then you're able to, like you were saying, with affecting other people and the joy and development of others. And
yeah, man, if you think you're alone because life is crappy, you're not. It's just everybody's not jumping in to admit that they have, their own problems and issues. I mean, everybody does.
Yeah, nobody's perfect.
I don't know. It's a taboo. People do not want to admit to imperfection. Man, I always tell people I'm imperfect too. We all are, but we're still human beings, and we try to improve and be good to our fellow human beings. What the hell was I going to say? I had a really good point that I was talking to one of the kids about. Oh, and I've told people this many times. Happiness, like when somebody is happy and they're really content with life. There's a lot of miserable SOBs out there, right? So, and they'll say nasty things. Now, a happy person, a content human being, will never go out of their way to say a malicious word to another human being to bring them suffering, because they are content and happy in life. It is only when they have an unresolved pain, something inside them, that it manifests to somebody else. So if somebody's being nasty or cruel or cursed with their words, there's nothing to do with that external thing they're talking about. It's always from the self. It always is. That's unfortunate. And we give grace and forgiveness to those people too. They didn't ask to be miserable SOBs. It just so happens that they are. So I hope that makes sense. I don't like doing these preachy things all the time, but you never know. Each day is special.
Oh man, but I want to be like you guys. I felt like
okay, yeah, right. Come over here and have a battle about dishes. Yeah, just kidding. We're always happy. Yeah, just kidding. Yeah, guys. So I hope this, I guess, is probably going to wrap it on up. I guess we're going to wrap it on up.
I hope that was helpful. And
I hope it wasn't too boring. I mean, it was kind of a tedious, it's like, oh man, who wants to talk about record keeping?
Kind of like talking about taxes.
But it's really important.
But it is, yeah, it is.
It's important, and again, I really got to say this, like the whole mentality of like homestead or small business, whatever you're doing, it's about personal growth. You're growing, and you need to be, vigilant and self-discipline. And this is one of those things. And pain, discomfort, the things we don't like are usually the things that lead us to the greatest growth. And learning skills that we are really apprehensive about because we don't like the idea of doing it, it's probably going to be very beneficial for us. I don't want to do it. Like my mentality is that. It's like, I don't want to do it, so I'm definitely going to do it. Like the less I want to do something, the more I try to force myself to do it. Not saying I'm Superman, look at me, but the reward is great. The reason I do it is because I am selfish, because the reward is good, because I feel so much better after doing something I do not want to do. And there's neurochemical, physiological reasons why that's actually very true. I want to get into it right now. But simple stuff like this, adopting a new skill that you were maybe apprehensive about or intimidated with, you're going to feel a lot better. Even if you don't do it well, at least you tried and you're like, okay, great, I'm not good at that. I'll move on and figure out another way to do this. Does that make any sense? Mm-hmm. All right, cool. We sure do love you coming down here to the Dinosaur Outlet every Thursday night at 8:30. We appreciate your questions, comments, and concerns. If you have anything else, reach out to us.
It was amazing.
Aw, thanks, Kelly.
Kelly.
I'm trying to do my 1970s talk show host speed talk. I used to love the way to do that. Anyway, really appreciate you guys coming down. If you have any suggestions, if you want to know anything else that we have information, we'd be happy to do it. We like doing these things.
But yeah, if you aren't following our channel already, please subscribe and like the video. And yeah, we will be bringing on more interesting topics.
Oh, have a wonderful night, Susan.
Good night, Susan. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, Vernon, please catch some big fish. I'm going to check out his thing when he catches a fish. Anyway, guys, Very nice seeing you again.
Have a great
Everybody
night.
be well and have a happy night.
Bye.
Thanks, Aaron. We'll see you.